Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into Martha Nussbaum's monumental 750-page masterpiece, Upheavals of Thought. And let me tell you, this is going to completely reframe how you understand human nature. Seriously, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by your own feelings and wondered, what is actually going on in my head right now? You are in exactly the right place. Let's get into it. So let me ask you a question. Are emotions the enemy of reason? For thousands of years, Western civilization has been feeding us this very specific story about what it means to be a rational human being. It's a story of total division. It tells us there is a constant, raging battleground inside every single one of us, pitting our calm, cool logic against our chaotic, messy feelings. Let's just unpack this ancient myth for a second. On one side, you've got reason. We're taught that reason is the cold, logical, clear-headed pilot of the soul. It does the math, it builds the bridges. And on the other side, emotion. It's painted as this messy, unpredictable, almost animalistic enemy. We've been told forever that to live a good, ethical life, you just have to conquer those wild impulses. But Martha Nussbaum, she completely flips the script. She asks, what if a sudden flash of anger or a massive wave of compassion isn't some momentary lapse of logic? What if it's actually a highly complex, incredibly intelligent judgment about the world? To really turn this myth on its head, Nussbaum borrows this absolutely perfect phrase from the French novelist Marcel Proust. He described emotions as geologic upheavals of thought. Think about that. Just like an earthquake can suddenly heave a totally flat landscape into these massive, jagged peaks, a sudden emotion reveals the deep, hidden topography of what we actually value. Emotions aren't just these passive storms that hijack our brains. They are highly sophisticated cognitive judgments. To really grasp this, let's anchor this high-level philosophy with a deeply human experience. Back in 1992, Nussbaum was traveling in Europe when she got the news that her mother had passed away. Standing there in the hospital room, she was hit by this crushing wave of grief. Her heart was racing, her limbs went weak. But it wasn't just a physical stress response, right? It wasn't just a flood of cortisol. Her grief was actually making a profound claim about reality. It was her mind making a judgment. A person of immense, irreplaceable value to my life is gone, and my world is permanently altered. What's fascinating here is how Nussbaum takes the ancient Stoic framework and totally turns it upside down. See, the Stoics claimed emotions were judgments, but they thought they were false judgments. They thought we shouldn't care so much about external things. But Nussbaum agrees they are judgments. She just argues that they are true judgments. External things like our parents, our kids, our freedoms, they genuinely do have immense value. Admitting our neediness isn't some kind of weakness. It is a profound truth about human existence. We are at our core vulnerable creatures. Actually, you can break down the anatomy of literally any emotion into 4 specific cognitive steps. First up, intentionality. An emotion is always directed at a target. You're angry at your boss, or you're grieving a parent. Second is belief. You have to hold a belief about that object. Like if you're terrified of a scary dog barking at you, but then you realize it's just a robotic toy, your fear instantly vanishes because your belief changed. Third is value and appraisal. You invest high importance into that object. And finally, the 4th step, eudaimonism. That's just a fancy Greek word for human flourishing. Basically, you experience the emotion because that object is deeply tied to your own personal vision of a rich, meaningful life. Emotions literally map out our deepest values. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about dogs or babies? They don't have language. Well, it turns out you don't actually need human language to experience the intelligence of an emotion. Think about a dog grieving for a deceased owner. That dog possesses a mental image of its owner, associates them with safety, and perceives that this vital source of well-being is permanently gone. That right there is a wordless cognitive appraisal. It proves that our emotions are highly evolved biological tools for navigating a very unpredictable world. So why are adult emotions so incredibly messy sometimes? Well, to figure that out, we have to look all the way back to the cradle. When we're born, we enter the world in a state of extreme helplessness. Yet we experience what psychologists call primary narcissism. We cry and boom, food magically appears. We feel like omnipotent rulers of the universe. But pretty soon, the baby realizes the caregiver is a separate person with their own schedule. And this creates primitive shame. It's that terrifying realization that we are small, fragile, and absolutely cannot control the world. To heal from this, we rely on a safe, holding environment from our caregivers. That comfort helps us transition from demanding total control to finally accepting our mutual vulnerability. All right, let's zoom out a bit from the personal to the public sphere, because we really need to talk about justice. And to do that, we have to completely redefine compassion. We're so often told that laws should be based on cold, hard, impartial logic, right? No room for emotional pity. But Nussbaum argues that without compassion, true justice is literally impossible. Compassion isn't some soft, fuzzy, sentimental feeling. It is the absolute engine of social justice. It is a highly sophisticated cognitive judgment that lets us genuinely recognize the suffering of others, and it's what actually motivates us to take moral action. Let's look under the hood for a second. For you to feel genuine compassion, your brain is actually running through three distinct evaluative judgments in a split second. First, the judgment of size. You recognize the suffering is serious. We're talking about losing a home, not just, chipping a fingernail. Second, the judgment of non-fault. You recognize that their suffering is undeserved. And third, and this is the most crucial one, the eudaimonistic judgment. You have to see that suffering person as part of your own circle of concern. You build a bridge of shared humanity, realizing that their flourishing is directly connected to the kind of world you want to live in. But, and this is a big but, we have to actively guard against three very destructive barriers that block our ability to feel that shared humanity. First is shame. It makes us turn away from people who are suffering because they remind us of our own dreaded weaknesses. Then there's envy, which makes us so hyper-focused on what we lack that we literally can't see someone else's pain. But the most dangerous barrier of all? Disgust. Disgust is all about protecting our boundaries from contamination. And historically, societies project this disgust onto marginalized groups, treating them as unclean contaminants rather than human beings. It completely destroys any capacity for compassion. So, what does a just society actually look like? Well, it has to build rational compassion right into its legal and political DNA to protect our fragile human lives. Nussbaum calls this the capabilities approach. Think about public schools, universal healthcare, civil rights laws. These shouldn't just be cold, abstract calculations of utility. They are collective acts of institutionalized compassion. When you look at your local public school, you are literally looking at society recognizing that human lives are fragile and making a legal commitment to protect each other from tragedies like poverty and ignorance. Okay, we cannot talk about emotions without tackling the most powerful, tumultuous, and frankly, dangerous emotion of all: love. How on earth do we navigate the extreme, terrifying vulnerability of romantic love without completely losing ourselves? Because if emotions are judgments of value, then love is the ultimate appraisal. You are investing a massive amount of your own happiness into one single, irreplaceable person. If they leave or if they pass away, your entire world shatters. And honestly, that level of vulnerability is terrifying. Because it's so terrifying, humans throughout history have desperately tried to invent escape routes. They try to climb what Nussbaum calls ladders of love. Take Plato's contemplative ascent. Plato said, sure, you start on the bottom rung, loving a specific physical body. But to escape the pain of attachment, you climb up. You move to loving all physical beauty, then beautiful minds, until finally, at the very top, you only love the pure, abstract form of beauty itself. It's perfectly safe, it can never die, but think about how absurd that is. By climbing that ladder, you're literally erasing the unique, irreplaceable living person you started with, all for the sake of feeling safe. And Plato definitely wasn't the only one building escape ladders. The Christian ascent, which you see in thinkers like St. Augustine, tells you to only love mortal humans in God. You redirect your primary love upward to the divine, basically to protect yourself from the absolute grief of losing a mortal friend. Then, on the flip side, we have the romantic ascent. Think of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. They don't look to God. They look for total, transcendent fusion with their partner. But here's the reality check. We are separate biological individuals. Total fusion is physically impossible, and striving for it almost always leads to destructive, violent jealousy. Ultimately, all these ascents are just flawed attempts to escape everyday reality. So all those previous ladders, they were a quest for perfection, constantly trying to climb up and away from our flawed human vulnerability. Martha Nussbaum says that if we want to truly love, we have to stop trying to climb away. We actually need to invert the ladder. We need what she calls a democratic desire. We have to climb down and actively embrace the messy, earthly, everyday reality of the actual people standing right in front of us. The American poet Walt Whitman completely nailed this idea of horizontal democratic desire. In his poetry, he absolutely refused to divide the pure soul from the messy body. He teaches us that curing our shame and embracing the raw physical human body, sweat, imperfections, the whole shebang, is the absolute foundation of true connection. When we finally accept our bodily nature, we don't need to look down on others to feel strong anymore. We accept our shared vulnerability as the very glue that holds us all together. We see the ultimate, beautiful culmination of this kind of earthly love in James Joyce's masterpiece, Ulysses. The main character, Leopold Bloom, is definitely not your traditional flawless hero. He's clumsy, he is fully aware his wife is having an affair, and he is deeply, deeply imperfect. And yet, his totally ordinary, messy day in Dublin is filled with these quiet, profound acts of compassion and acceptance. Bloom represents the transfiguration of everyday life. He brings the whole ideal of love out of the clouds and plants it right back down into the gritty earth. And the novel wraps up with Molly Bloom's famous, ecstatic final words, which just perfectly capture this inverted ladder. She knows Leopold isn't some perfect Prince Charming, and he knows she is flawed too. But her final monologue represents this total, profound acceptance of her deeply flawed husband exactly as he is. It's a love that says yes to the body, yes to imperfection, and yes to the total vulnerability of daily life. It shows us that true beauty isn't found in spite of our flaws, but precisely within them. To wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. We do not have to live our lives as a constant, exhausting war between reason and emotion. Your emotions are not irrational glitches in the system. They are the highly intelligent voice of your absolute deepest values. So here is my challenge to you. The next time an emotional earthquake hits, whether it's crushing grief, sudden anger, or overwhelming love, don't run from the vulnerability. Don't build a wall. Just stop, listen, and ask yourself, what is my heart trying to teach me right now?
Please like and subscribe.